Welcome back to Get Your Voice Out There. I'm Roberta Chadis, and today I'd like to start our show off with a quote. When we go to the heart of the city to bear witness to life on the streets, we're offering ourselves, not blankets, not food, not clothes, just ourselves. This is a quote from Bernie Glassman. And today, my very special guest, Marushka Glissen, is going to talk to us about an experience that she had on the streets in New York City. Thank you so much for coming today. Welcome to Get Your Voice Out There.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And we've known each other for quite a number of years, Marushka. And you told me about this street retreat that you were going to do. And I pretty much said, what are you, crazy? And you did it. And I think a lot of people are going to be very interested in what you did and why you did it. But first, I think you should tell our audience a little bit about who you are, and then we'll talk about what led you to this experience. Okay?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm a practicing psychotherapist. I have my own private practice in Newton Center. I'm a mother of 2 young men in their 20s that I'm extremely proud of. I work in Newton. I live in Jamaica Plain.
Yeah, and you deal with people who have a lot of issues to deal with, right?
Yes.
And one of the issues that you had that I think really led you to this was this concept of bearing witness. And could you just tell us a little bit about that? I know you went to, you went to Germany.
Auschwitz,
Yes,
yeah.
Auschwitz.
Yeah.
A little bit about that might help us get into the concept.
Yeah, so I'm a child of 2 Holocaust survivors, and I was from a silent family. They didn't really speak a lot about it. I understand a lot more about that now. And in 2012, I heard about this retreat that was led by Bernie Glassman. And the group is called the Zen Peacemakers. And in 2012, I went to Auschwitz to kind of learn more about what happened to my family and, the members that I never met.
Yeah.
And
that was tough. Was that tough?
yeah, the first year it was tough. And then I went every year for the last 4 years. They're there now. And this is the first year I haven't gone. And I also went to bear witness to the Native Americans. So Bernie Glassman kind of leads people in these bearing witness retreats in areas of genocide, where genocide happened. And it's, you learn a lot from being there, from being in these retreats.
The concept of bearing witness, just to clarify that, is you go someplace and how do you feel? Like, what are you thinking about when you're there?
Well, the bearing witness retreats are based on these 3 tenets, which is not knowing, so going with an open and fresh mind.
Right.
Bearing witness, and loving action, taking loving action out of not knowing. And so you're going there, you don't know what to expect.
Right.
And we meditate and we do counsel groups, which is people speaking and listening from the heart and taking like an object, a sacred object, and passing it, and nobody speaks when one person's speaking.
Wow.
So we had groups like that. And eventually I led groups.
It's very powerful.
At the bearing witness retreats, yeah.
Yeah, very, very powerful.
Yeah.
So that led you to this Zen group, and the topic of today's show is homelessness. And the program I did read about very, very deeply. I read about this whole thing, and I thought, oh my God, I don't think I could ever do this. How did you feel about even doing this retreat? And maybe you can explain a little bit about what it is.
Well, I think that, the few stories that I heard from my parents, one of those stories was that my father, was made to march in very, very extreme weather conditions with just his underwear because he was in small labor camps. And I remember growing up, and he told me that he had to deal with very cold winters with bare feet. So periodically throughout my childhood and my adulthood, I would go outside in like Boston winters with my bare feet, and I wouldn't last very long, as you can imagine. And so when I heard about these street retreats, I thought I would never do it. But I think that when I think about my parents and what they went through and what they survived, I figure, I can do this street retreat. And I think I did it partly because I wanted to find out more about what it is to live in adverse conditions like my parents did.
It's true. It's a really scary thought to think that you don't have money and you don't have, in this day and age, a cell phone, or you don't have enough clothes, you don't have any clean underwear. It's really not something that the ordinary person on the street wants to think about. And so we're going to talk about that process and the preparation that you had to do before your experience in New York City, which, one thing if you're in the Boston area doing it, but maybe it was good. Was it good to be outside of where you live?
Yeah, I wanted to. There was a teacher that was like kind of leading it, and he was in New York, so that's why I went to New York. But he's given 49 street retreats. He's led 49 street retreats all over the world. So he does it in Europe. He did it in Brazil, Santa Fe, New Mexico. So they're all over the world.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So what did your family think about this? What did your sons feel? How did your husband feel?
Well, my husband was extremely supportive because he's gone to Auschwitz with me, and he's bared witness in the South Dakota.
Yeah.
And so it's a very, very spiritual and moving experience. And, part of it is that I want to feel more of the equality in human beings. So I feel like there's oneness with everybody, like we're all one. And so that's why I do this. When you bear witness, even in places like Auschwitz, you can really start to come to understand how these German soldiers did what they did too.
Yeah. So
that's part of it also, just to really get the humanity of everybody. And I do that, I want to experience that because, part of genocide is making other people other. And when you make people other, then you can do bad things to them.
So what do you mean by that, making them other?
Othering people.
Yeah.
Like, with racism, with the Nazism, you're looking at it. Yes, you're looking at an
inanimate object.
Yeah, that they're not human. You treat them as subhuman because they're apart from you. They're right. And so when you see the humanity in everybody, the oneness in everybody, you can't do bad things to them.
That's an interesting concept, though. I'm not sure if we all really recognize that we might be doing that, even in a regular day-to-day environment.
Right.
That we don't respect other people because they're a person. Yeah.
Like you. Right. Oh. Yeah, right.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. And we do have that relationship to ourselves. That is so important. Okay, well, I was really deep into that one. And your sons, everybody was supportive, yes?
Well, actually, my sons were a little bit, they didn't understand why I would do that, and they didn't understand what it would do, because I'm not homeless, and here I am acting as if I'm homeless, and then I'm going back to my home. So how does that make a difference? And one of my sons asked me, you know, when was the last time that you were uncomfortable? Are you used to being uncomfortable? And I was like, my brain froze over and went,
Right.
I don't remember when the last time is that I was uncomfortable for a long period of time. And he was thinking that there was no way that I would last, that I could do the whole weekend.
And it was 4 days.
And it was 4 days.
But it really started off with more. Before I even get into that, was there something that you were afraid of before you went on this retreat? Was there something that really was like really making you nervous?
Well, yeah, I was afraid of sleeping on a sidewalk on the streets, and I'm into like really nice hotels. I don't even camp.
Right.
So like,
I know.
how was I going to do that? And also I was afraid of getting mugged or beaten up or even murdered, perhaps, because you're so vulnerable
Exactly.
on the street. I mean, you know, you're just sleeping out in the open. And anybody can come and hurt you if they wanted to. And it's New York City.
Yeah.
So the whole prospect was scary. I couldn't bring my phone. I had no way of contacting anybody. I couldn't bring money. I had to trust that I would like meet this group at a certain time and area in the streets. So it was very scary. It was definitely a plunge into the unknown.
Definitely, definitely. So let's talk about what you had to do before you went to New York. I start off with the street retreat setup here, the preparation, and one of them is do not shave or wash your hair for 5 days prior to the retreat. How did that go?
It was hard.
Very hard.
Yeah. You know, one of the things, though, one of the preparations was to ask people for money. So the minimum that you had to give was $500, and a quarter of that would go to Genro's Hudson River Zen Center in New York, in Yonkers, I think it is, and then 3/4 of the money would go to different organizations that like helped us on the street. So I put out a call to my internal family systems community of therapists and friends, and I raised like $1,800, over 3 times 500.
Were you surprised?
It was really lovely because people were sending me cards and telling me how much they admired what I was doing and really kind of welcoming a different way of looking at life that I was representing for them. So I was really moved. And, you know, the whole premise is that people really want to help. And if you ask for money, it's giving them an opportunity to journey with you and get into what you're doing with you. And so this concept of, it's called raising a mala, was very alien to me before I started bearing witness with the Zen Peacemakers. And I understand it a lot better now. It's very humbling. It's embarrassing in a way. It can be shaming. But for me, it was such a positive experience because I got so much positive feedback from people.
See, I love that we're talking about this because these are things that people don't really love to talk about. Putting themselves in a risk situation or just putting themselves out in the street with nothing. And I think one of the other things that I like to make sure I read this properly, but you should not bring any books, bedding, conveniences, medications are okay, but really, I love that they said, and you'll be finding treasures along the way. Did you find any treasures along the way, Marushka? I bet you did. Were there times that you were just all by yourself in the street and thinking, oh my God, I never heard the birds tweeting or whatever, or the sky, or...
There was a lot of time to hang out, and I think that I was absorbing the outside world in a much different way because I wasn't preoccupied by messages on my phone, or I think that was one of the most significant things, is leaving your phone and your computer. And I actually think that people should be rebooting like they cleanse and they fast. Mm-hmm. They should fast and cleanse from computer and phones because you can take in so much more when you're not being preoccupied by other things.
It's so true.
I want to add, in biblical times, people did this. They begged. I think Jesus, he didn't have any money, right?
I don't think so.
And there was this Peace Pilgrim, I think, that was written.
Yes, I know about the Peace Pilgrim.
Oh, you do?
I do.
And didn't they march miles and miles without any money? And they were at the, they were asking people to put them up, and or one person, a woman maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has been going on for a long time.
And you met a woman, Fatima.
Yeah.
And we would like to bring up her photo so that you can all see Fatima. Tell us a little bit about Fatima.
So we ate in missions. So there was the Bowery Mission in the Village in New York City. And so we ate at missions, and Fatima was at the Bowery Mission, and she had joined Genro in the street retreat last year. And at first she didn't recognize him, but he kept on gazing at her, and then she finally knew who he was. And she came with us the last day and evening and showed us where to sleep. And so she became a part of our retreat. Great. And I really got to know her and love her, actually. And I felt a deep connection to her. And she's been on the street for almost 30 years. And she was born to a mother who, was drug addicted, and she was in and out of foster homes. And she admitted to us that she drank and did drugs every day because she couldn't cope with her life, and she didn't have any teeth. But there was something about her spirit that was so beautiful. She had such a lively spirit, and she wanted to do something good in the world.
Yeah,
and she
survivor,
wanted redemption. And so she joined us, and we came to know her. And at the last day of the retreat, when we were going, when we had our council and we were each speaking, she was crying, and she was saying that, there must be a reason why she's still alive, and, maybe God has something good in store for her. And she looked right in my eyes, and she said, "Don't forget about me. Don't forget about Fatima." And I haven't. And I really want to go back to New York and find her. And she said, "You can find me either here or I'll be sleeping here."
Unbelievable.
And one of the men in our group, it was her birthday the week after we were there. And we decided as a group that we would give some of the money that we raised, the mala, to her as a birthday gift. So Scott went back, returned to New York, and found her. And at first she didn't recognize him, just like with Genro. But, you know, a few minutes later she did, and he took her out to lunch and then bought her, gave her a $150 gift certificate and took her to Kmart and bought her a coat and other things she wanted. And yeah.
Yeah. So I bet there are things that you want to do now that you might not have thought about doing for the homeless. There's a lot of places that are trying to help them. That I know there's one right here called Life Bridge. But you had a specific thing that you wanted to do. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so, you know, during our experience, we took cardboard. So that's what a lot of street people do. They take cardboard from like liquor stores and put it on the ground to get some cushioning. And we did that, and it didn't really do anything. In fact, one of the nights it poured rain, and so we had this cardboard underneath us, and I had jeans on, and I was soaked through and through for a long, long time. So one of my ideas is that I would get thin mats that are like water repellent, so they'd have some more cushion, and they wouldn't get as soaked when they sleep in the streets. So I'm going to put it on GoFundMe and ask for donations when I do a salon in the near future for my community.
That's great.
And hopefully I'll be able to distribute them in Boston and go back to Fatima in New York and distribute them there.
And if our audience that's watching right now wants to get in touch with you, Marushka, how would they do that? And can they call you? Can they email you?
They can email me and they can call me.
So it's Marushka Glissen.
Right, at gmail.com.
That's excellent. And we're going to put your phone number up so that anyone can call you.
Yes.
That's perfect. That's
and
perfect.
I'm also a therapist,
yes.
a couples therapist, an individual therapist.
You do a lot.
Yeah.
You definitely do a lot. And I also was wondering, let's see what I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you if you feel any different now that you've done this particular retreat. Does this make you look at people in the streets a little bit differently, emotionally? How does that, what's changed?
Well, I think that there's, because I'm a psychotherapist, I've always been interested in helping people, and I feel like I'm trying to move more into social action, whatever that means. So really thinking about moving from the individual to the group, and what do other groups need. And so that's how these experiences have changed me. I want to help people to move away from their own concerns and move toward helping others. And I think that really that's why we're here. That's why we're here, to love more and to help others and to get out of our own small little worlds.
Yes. So do you have any suggestions, including that one, for our audience? Is there something specific that we could all do that might actually make a little change in the world?
So, you know, my email, when I was raising a mala, it hit like 350 or 1,000 therapists, maybe 800 to 1,000. And one of the people, my very good friend Mary, had told me that she didn't want to send me money, but she was giving to this homeless woman that lived near her house, that she saw in Connecticut all the time. And so she gave her a $20 bill in my name and was starting to give to this woman regularly.
Yeah.
And so what I like to tell people is, not to, and Richard Gere was doing a movie on being homeless, and he said that nobody recognized him on the streets in New York City. Why? Because they didn't look at him. Nobody looked at him. And so I'd like to tell people to start looking at people on the street and maybe giving something to them. And don't worry if they're going to be drinking or drugging with it. Just give it to them, because when you give to people, you change your countenance. You can be in a bad mood, but if you give to somebody else, it helps. It helps you and it helps the world.
You're going to make me cry. Did anyone give anything to you when you were in New York on this retreat? Did anyone offer to help you?
Yes. So when we were going into the Bowery mission, the place where people are fed, I was kind of, they do this proselytizing. You have to go to like this little church before you eat. And and then they show you like these horrible biblical movies that you watch.
Oh, no.
But when I was sitting in the pew, I was kind of like falling asleep. And this short little black man came over to me and said, "Do you want some coffee?" And I said, okay, because I didn't want to refuse him. He was offering me something. And I thought he was one of the guys who like was working at the mission. And a few minutes goes by and he comes in with the coffee. And as I was walking to the food lines, I saw that he was just another person waiting to eat. And he had offered me coffee, and he went outside of the Bowery to get coffee for me. I don't know where it came from, but I thought, how sweet was that?
Just the kindness of others who they don't even have enough for themselves.
Yeah.
Must have seen something in you, I would say.
I don't know. I don't know, because he didn't go to anyone else and offer them coffee.
Well, sometimes there's that energy that you feel. I know now that I've listened to your story face to face, I feel like I'm going to do something different. I really do. I feel as though I have avoided people's eye contact in the street, and I will give. And I hope that our audience may take that step as well, or just do something that makes them feel comfortable.
Right.
So that they're not ignoring a situation that is so big. It's huge in this world. And therefore, anyone could be out in the street. I could be on the street. You could be on the street.
Right.
Our children, our family, our friends. There's a lot of people that are very, very, very close to either living in their car or being on the street or just being without anything. So it's a kind of a crazy thing.
Yes, and you can also, I would urge people to volunteer in soup kitchens. And,
that's excellent.
It's the holidays now, right? So donate food to starving families.
Exactly.
And children. And, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go and help around Christmas time.
Yeah, and any holiday is good.
Right.
Really.
That's right.
It could be summertime, it could be wintertime. It's the same time in the street when you have nothing.
Yeah, and in churches and in temples, they have food drives around the holidays. So if you have canned food, or just donate.
That's nice.
And clothes.
And clothes, yes. So this was a long discussion. I feel somewhat cleansed, having really talked about some issues that are scary and really hit the core of your heart. And I really want to acknowledge you, Marushka, because, sometimes we all want to do something and we think about it and we walk away, and you didn't walk away. You went through, I'm getting the chills. You actually did this, even though I think a couple of times I said, don't be crazy, don't do this. This isn't a smart thing to do. And yet you did it. And I'm just really proud of you. I'm proud to know you. And I think that everyone will learn something and get some value out of what you said today. Thank you very much.
Thank
really.
you. And remember that they're like you, right? So I was never, ever threatened on the street. And
That's excellent.
yeah.
That's nice. It's a nice feeling to not feel threatened. Really, I think the more you give, the more you get.
Yeah.
So thank you, Marushka.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And thank you for watching. This is Roberta Chadis. It's Get Your Voice Out There, and we'll be back again soon.